Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Hunting Stories podcast. I'm your host, Michael, and we got a great one for you today. Today, we're actually connecting with Ike Eastman of Eastman's Hunting Journals. That's right, we have a little bit of hunting royalty talking to us today, and he tells us a crazy story, a couple stories actually, but he starts us off by going to Mongolia on a bucket list hunt of his, and it is an amazing story. By the end of it, I'm not sure if he talked me into it or talked me out of going. Either way, Ike, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was a ton of fun to talk to you. To you listeners, thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you go and check out Eastman's Hunting Journals, and beyond that, make sure you go and rate our podcast on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you're listening, and share it with a friend or two. Now I'm going to get off my little soapbox here. I'm going to let you guys just go ahead and get this thing started. Ike, thank you again. Now let's let Ike tell you his stories. All right, Ike. Welcome to the Hunting Stories podcast. How are you?
Good. I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me on to tell some lies. Well, I shouldn't say lies. Let's say spins on the truth, right?
Every good tale,
story,
right?
Yeah, every good story needs embellishment to make it just a little bit more entertaining.
Absolutely. That reminds me, I think I saw it on Instagram, but it was basically like Teddy Roosevelt, and it was like, here's his favorite hunting story, and he's like riding a Tyrannosaurus Rex or something like that. So that's part of the fun in hunting stories. No one's going to ever really know if it's the full truth, and it doesn't really matter. So,
no.
But, you know, Ike, I have a feeling a lot of people already know who you are if they're tuning in, but let's go ahead and kick this thing off right and let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Ike Eastman, owner of Eastman's Publishing, which is a multimedia company focused on Western big game hunting. And I'm third generation in the industry. My dad started the company, but my grandfather started filming wildlife in Alaska in 1957.
Wow.
Until he passed away. Yeah, until he passed away in 96. So yeah, I've been really blessed to go some really cool places. Our family is kind of known for being adventurous. My grandfather, he way ahead of the curve filming stuff in 57, in Alaska and all up north country, and did crazy things. Like he got stuck on the ice pack for 3 days, crashed an airplane and survived out on the ice in the middle of winter for 3 days before the Air Force found him, and just crazy stuff. So we're really adventurous.
That's awesome. You know, like, I don't want to interrupt you, but my father-in-law did something super similar up in up in Canada. I'm not sure specifically where. He was on a helicopter, and they crashed on an island in the middle of a frozen river, basically.
Oh man!
And they had to get rescued too. Basically, spent I think it was 2 days. Not quite as many days, but it's crazy to hear someone that has a very similar, just quick story like that. So
yeah,
go ahead.
That's crazy. So I was introduced to being adventurous very young in life. And one of the books that my grandfather, he was a huge reader. And one of, many memories I have of him is sitting by a fire, and they lived in this really neat house. He's sitting by a fire and he would read, and he was a night owl. So he'd read till, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And it was probably about the time I was in kindergarten or something like that, and I was just learning how to read. I remember sitting on his lap, and he started reading this book to me, and it was written about Mongolia, and it's called East of the Moon, West of the Sun, and it's all about these six guys that take this adventure to Mongolia, and they spend pretty much 6 months over there trying to hunt the largest sheep in the world, and that's the argali.
Oh, cool.
And I just fell in love with the country and the landscape. And so I started, doing a ton of research on not only hunting in Mongolia, but just the Mongolian culture and how, Genghis Khan was, he got closer than anybody to conquering the entire world, and how they did it side note, how they survived, if you can imagine this, is they would cut goat meat up into strips, like long strips, and they would put it in between their saddle blankets of their horses. And so it would dry cure it with the salt from the horse. It would dry cure this meat. And that's how they were able to move huge forces of troops for really, really long ways and not run out of food, is because they were 100% keto diet, goat meat that was being cured in between their saddle blankets as they traveled.
It's super Innovative. It sounds disgusting, but you got to do what you got to do, right?
Yeah, and
Have
if
you
that's
have you
what you're
ever
used
like
to.
tried anything like that, or is that still on your bucket list?
So I've had goat meat. When you we're near Mongolia, that's pretty much their protein. One of their main proteins is goat meat because they have goats everywhere.
Yeah.
And obviously the goat wool, which is huge, it's a huge industry, is is a big deal over there. So they have a ton of goats. But I've never tried to cure them between salad blankets. I don't know how long that would take, but it's got to be weeks, right?
I have no idea. Oh, that's pretty
so
good.
so I fell in love with Mongolia, and uh, later in life, I got the opportunity. I convinced my dad and my brother. I said, let's go to Mongolia. It's never been cheaper. This was in 2012. It's never been cheaper, and it's not going to be. It's just going to get more and more expensive. Mongolia was starting to become really really popular. I had my wife had our second baby on the way, and I was like, I know how much the first one crashed our lives. This one's really going to crash our lives. So
Yeah.
I gotta do some of these bucket list things all at once.
That's a
And I did.
good foresight, man. I tell people all the time, like 1+1 does not equal 2 when it comes to kids. It's something more than
No.
2. I don't know what it is exactly, but I didn't have that foresight, and I just we now we're on 2. My wife's looking for 3, and I'm like, well, hold on, I got some things I want to do. So,
Yeah. One year in that year, I went to Mongolia, Brazil, and Germany all in 12 months, just doing bucket list things. Like went to Brazil and caught peacock bass on the Amazon, went on a driven hunt in Germany, and then went to Mongolia. I kind
wow.
of used up all of my chips in one year, and then I didn't travel for 4 or 5. But so we decided to do this, and I have a ton of contacts in the hunting industry that do Asian stuff. In fact, the guy that is the voice of our TV show, his name's Clark Jeffs. And so when you watch the beginning of our TV show and there's a voiceover guy, he's
Mhm.
that guy. He lives here in our town. But what he really does for a living is he sells, Asian, African, Russian. He sells, epic adventure hunts. And so I got a hold of Clark and I said, hey, I want to do this. And when I think we met up at it was a sheep show or SCI or one of them, and just nailed it down. And I said, we're going to do this because it's not going to be any easier ever. Asia is still pretty friendly to the U.S. back then. So we made this plan, and I decided early. I said, let's just not go to Mongolia and just take 10 days and go hunting and then come home. I said, if we're gonna go that far, let's do some adventure stuff. Let's do some things that we may never get to do again. And so I convinced him to let us go to China, Beijing, for 3 days. And so I'm standing right here in front of you. I have taken guns into Beijing, China, and left them for
Wow.
3 days in the head of security for the airport's office, locked up in his closet. He didn't even know what to do with them.
It's like no one's ever tried this before. I don't know
He
I
goes,
don't know what to
it was
do.
one of those things where our interpreter, he's like, no, it's legal, and he shows him where it's legal. You just can't take him out of the airport, blah 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 blah. And the guy goes, I don't know what to do with them. I guess we'll throw them in my closet. Well, he just threw them in the closet and locked them up and said, I hope you come back and get them because I don't want those things in my closet for very long.
Yeah.
So we did it. So we went to Beijing, and it was really really neat. That was back when it was way before the Olympics, and the smog was, you could taste it. It was
Ugh.
so thick. It was just in the amount of people, and there's a 6-lane highway, and 90% of the vehicles on the highway are bicycles. I mean, it's just absolute insanity. You just look at the power grid and all kinds of crazy stuff. But we got to go to Tiananmen Square, and we went to Mao's tomb, and we did get to go to the Great Wall and actually walk up the Great Wall. I have some rocks that I confiscated from there and put them in my pocket just so I could say I have some
Yeah.
rocks from the Great Wall. And it was really, really neat. Now, looking back on it, I was like, what were we thinking? Because we started off a trip in a country that doesn't have any food that I would, be able to recognize. Like their big thing is they take a duck, a whole duck alive, feathers on it, and dump him into boiling peanut oil and pull him out and start breaking chunks off and eat him, beak and all, the whole 9 yards.
Jesus.
Unbelievable. And they're still kind of, in my opinion, in our opinions, I would say they're sadistic, because when they do this, there's a big, you watch it through a window, you pick your duck, and then they dump it in there and you watch them cook it. This poor duck's literally boiling to death.
That's crazy. It's like lobster, right? But
yeah, exactly. That's what my dad goes, well, we do that to lobsters. I went, okay, that's fair. But we started this trip off in 3 days of not eating much, and trying to eat what we could in the airports on the way over and on the way back, on the way to Mongolia. So then we leave Beijing, and it's like an 8-hour flight to Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, which is the capital city of Mongolia. And it was right at the cusp when they had just had a huge drought of 3 years previously, and then a really bad winter. That winter was really, really bad. And so all the people, they're nomads typically. Well, they had all moved to the city, but they were living in yurts outside. They call them gurs, outside of the city limits. So it's just miles and miles as you land on this strip. There's just miles and miles and miles of these gurs everywhere. And you can't imagine, my dad said it perfectly. He goes, where are they putting all the shit? I mean, it's just amazing.
Great question.
I mean, it's going somewhere.
Yeah,
so
it's probably just right there. It's probably not going anywhere, right?
No, it's not. After you get out of the airport and you drive around a little bit, you realize that it's just there. And and those people probably pray for a really good monsoon type weather storm that pushes everything downriver from them. But really pretty. The people are extremely neat. They're really, really neat people. They're exactly what you'd think. Huge upper bodies and little tiny legs. I mean, it's amazing. They're all nobody's over 5'5", but their chest or their shoulders are twice as wide as mine. They're crazy big people. Yeah,
they're like cartoons. That's how like cartoon dads are drawn, right? With just these spindly legs and these barrel chests. Yeah. It's interesting.
They all look like conch off of the well, anyway. So so we stayed the night there, and here's where the thing starts to get really dicey. My dad, of course, you've been traveling for 5 days roughly and not sleeping well, and my dad wakes up in the middle of the night and thinks that it's 5 o'clock in the morning, or thinks it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but it's really 2 o'clock in the morning. He jumps up in a panic, runs into the bathroom in the hotel. It was called the Genghis Khan Hotel, which was pretty sketchy in itself, but runs into the bathroom and takes a shower and does all this stuff, and he brushes his teeth and doesn't even think about it. Brushes his teeth with the water.
Oh no.
Comes out and goes, I shouldn't have done that. And I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting to see what happens. So that morning we get back on the airplane and we fly to in a little, the planes just get smaller and smaller. We flew on the largest airplane ever built, the A380, all the way down to a de Havilland, puddle jumper, and fly into this town called High Altai. It's the High Altai. It's right at the base of where Everest is. Yeah, it's the mountains that Everest is in, the mountain range. Anyway, so we're there, and you're landing at 12,000 feet, and the altitude is crazy. You're 12,000 feet, but it's a flat prairie, and just crazy. So we get in the Jeeps, and the interpreter we have in Mongolia speaks really good English, but he owns the hunting concession, and so he kind of understands how to manipulate a story. Let's put it that way. We get in this Jeep at like noon. We go to this little shack that we can buy some stuff, and so we buy snacks, and by this time we're buying our own water because we don't trust it, because we've heard stories that what they do, and to this day I still do this. What they do, if you don't crunch your water bottle, people will go around and pick them up, and then they fill them with the tap water, put them back, and sell them. And Jesus. Yes, so you always crunch your water bottle, because if you crunch your water bottle, you can tell that it's been crunched and it isn't a real water bottle. But so we're buy a case of water and all this stuff, and it's me, my dad, my brother Guy, and we have a camera guy with us, and we jump in this Jeep, and the interpreter and the two other guys, they jump in another Jeep, and we just start going down this 2-track road. And we're going and crossing creeks and going across this huge flat. Come to find out, it's the Agobe Desert is what it was. But we're just for hours and hours. And we get about 6 hours into the trip. The sun's, it's about evening time. And all of a sudden, our driver doesn't speak a lick of English. We don't speak any Mongol. I don't speak any Russian, nothing. And so there's, it's a pretty quiet ride. Plus, you're in a Russian Jeep that looks like it was built in 1955, and the windows don't roll down. I mean, it's just it's August, so it's 95 to 100 degrees. It's just blistering hot. About 6 o'clock, all of a sudden you could tell the motor wasn't running right, and so he would turn it around so the wind was hitting the engine, shut it off, open the hood, and then he'd sit there and have a smoke break. We're like, I mean, I don't care if he smokes when we drive. Of course, we didn't figure this out till about the fourth time this happens about every 45 minutes. The dang engine's overheating. It's too hot, and the wind's blowing from the back, so it's not getting enough ventilation in the engine. So we're constantly pulling over, and he's having a smoke break, and pulling over and having a smoke break. And then he'd pour water on the solenoid and pour water on the carburetor and try and cool the thing down. And we're sitting out there going, this is not good. We have no way of communicating. Cell phones don't work. I mean, you're in the middle of nowhere, literally. Like, this is not a good scenario. By ourselves, the other Jeep's gone. We hadn't seen them since we bought Genghis Khan vodka back there at the hut. And I'm like, well, I guess this is one way to end all things, but we'll just keep going and see what happens. And about 2 hours later, all of a sudden we're on a 2-track road all this time. 2 hours later, we pop up on this berm, and it's a paved highway, brand new paved highway. No stripes, but it's brand new. I mean, like they just laid it a few hours ago. Like, what the hell? And this Jeep, we're doing 60, 65 miles an hour on the 2-track. He gets on this paved road, and that Jeep is not built for pavement. He can't go like more than 35, 40 miles an hour tops. Squirrely all over the place, just crazy. Going along, so I'm like, okay, we got to be getting close now. Nope. 2 more hours. Now you got to remember, this is in August, and it's pretty high on the longitude, so it doesn't get dark until 10 o'clock. 9:30, 10 o'clock. We're still clipping along 8 o'clock, and sun's going down, and we pull into a gas station. I was like, oh my gosh, there's gas stations out here in the middle of nowhere, and it looks like I would say it's a 7-Eleven, but it looks like a pretty decent convenience store, like 15 pumps, and people are gassing stuff up and filling 2-liter bottles of, the empty 2-liter bottles of Coke with gas, and he's stuffing them in the back of the Jeep and stuff. I'm going, oh my gosh, we're not even close. He's filling stuff up like we're going to run out of gas at some point. And then the interpreter shows up, just out of nowhere. Oh, here you are. And he goes, oh, just a little bit longer, maybe another 30, 40 minutes, and we'll be at camp. I'm like, okay, well, that'd be good. We've been traveling for 4 days, and 3 of us in the back seat of this Jeep is not real comfortable. I'm not a small man. My brother's not a small guy, and the camera guy's short, but he's wide. So we keep on trucking, and 2 hours goes by. 3 hours goes by. We roll in to this camp at midnight. Dark is dark. It's got 4 gers. That one of them is ours, and an outhouse.
Like a tent, I'm assuming.
It's like it's a yurt. So okay, Russians call them yurts. Mongolians call them gers. It's the exact same thing. Okay. And we roll in there, and you just somewhat unpack, throw your sleeping bag out. They feed you, and by this time, my dad's not feeling all that hot, but so he doesn't eat. I eat. It's pretty good meat and like a potato or something. I was like, this isn't bad, knowing it's probably goat, but that's okay. And we went in, and the interpreter comes in and says, okay, you guys all settled in. We're going to get up at 3:30. I look at my watch. It's 1. I'm like, what's the point? You mean we're going to have a nap? Because it gets light at 4:30 or 5, and so they want to be at a certain place before the heat waves happen, that they can actually glass and that the ibex are up. So we do that, and the first day we roll around in the same Jeeps, and they're driving off road, and I'm talking up banks and up over mountains and stuff. I'm thinking to myself, we're going to roll this thing. We are absolutely going to roll this thing. Well, we get this time we get this driver. We called the Mad Hatter because he was always in a hurry. I mean, an absolute hurry. He was an Olympic wrestler, nonetheless. I mean, just a big dude. And the way you started his Jeep is you had to crank it. And so they have come to find out they were having jokes that he got the crank one because he could crank it in one crank because he was so strong versus other guys that have to do it 2 or 3 times. But he was always in a hurry, 100 miles an hour everywhere. And so, over rocks, and it was just crazy. Well, the first day we see a couple ibex, but nothing giant. But we know what we're looking at. We actually, my brother, who was he was in the camera guy, and him were in another Jeep. They went a different area. He missed a wolf over there, and they saw elk. So Mongolia is really unique. We went through on our way back. We went through their wildlife museum. And they have everything North America does. They have a species that looks exactly like our elk. They have a species that is just like our black bears. They have an antelope that looks just like our pronghorn. I mean, you couldn't tell the difference. Yes, it's crazy. All the big game species are mimicked there.
So beyond like their name, right? So I'm assuming they have different names there than they do.
Yeah.
Like genetically, are they the same, or are they just so close?
They're really, really close, though. Really close. They are. I read an article a long time ago about their elk that they're genetically very close. They could be considered a subspecies of our Rocky Mountain elk, or vice versa. Actually, I think it's vice versa. I think the Rocky Mountain elk could be a subspecies of their elk, and I can't remember what they have a funny name for them, like Auglies.
Can you hunt that kind of stuff too? Yeah. All that stuff's fair game. Interesting.
Yep. Huh. Yeah. In fact, yeah, they have. That's one of the new things is to get all the different elk species across the world. I've heard of guys talking at Dallas Safari Club and Safari Club about trying to get every elk species from around the world. That's collectors. Yeah.
California one's probably the hardest, even more so than
the Rosie.
No, the Thule.
Or the Thule. Right? Yeah. You got to have some good money to go play in that world.
Yeah, I didn't think that unless you were a citizen, but if you live in California, resident of California, you couldn't get that tag. I'm sure you probably could buy it. You're right, but
yeah, there's a big ranch outside of LA that has a bunch of them, and you can hunt on that place and shoot one, but they're ridiculously expensive.
I'm sure. Okay, well, I took us off track. Continue.
No, that's right. So we wake up, and that day my dad starts to get sick, and when I say sick, it's running out both ends and sometimes in the middle and just, not good.
Yeah.
So I convinced the interpreter that we're going to go back, and dad needs to rest and he's pretty sick. And on the way back, the interpreter says, so I'm a Buddhist, so we don't drink. He said, however, when I'm out here, I take a shot of vodka in the morning and a shot of vodka at night. And it helps kill whatever bacteria is in my stomach that shouldn't be there. And I don't get sick. Before I did that, I would get sick every time I came out here. So I'm like looking at my dad and I'm thinking, I ain't going down that road. So morning and night, shot a shot. I obviously didn't get hammered, but shot a shot. And I was the only one out of the 4 of us that didn't get sick. And I was the only one that did that. Everyone else got so sick. At the end, I was filming myself on this hunt, and I took an amazing ibex. He's 45 inches long, just an absolute giant of an ibex, and I shot him at like 170 yards. The interpreter filmed it because everyone else was just deathly ill, sick. So note to self. If you're going to learn something from this story, and actually I do this when I travel to like Mexico, might take my wife to Mexico on vacation. We'll take a shot of vodka in the morning, a shot of vodka, or not vodka. We do tequila down there, but same thing. Yeah. And it keeps you from getting whatever bug is floating around down there. If it's in the water or if it's, traveling down there or whatever.
That's some crazy Russian medicine there.
Yeah, it is. It is. Every time you feel a little green, you just take a shot and it goes away. So, but I shot this beautiful billy. Now, let me tell you about that. It was like the we're on a 7-day hunt. It was like day 5, and it's an ass kicker of a hunt because you're waking up at 3, you're going to bed at midnight. I mean, you're just you're not getting much sleep, and it's brutally hot in the middle of the day, and you don't do anything in the middle of the day. When you're out there, it's 3 or 4 hours of doing nothing, just laying around trying to find shade, and you just chase the shade around the Jeep and don't do anything. So you sleep sometimes, but it's so hot anyway.
Is it? Let me ask you, because you mentioned it's like this giant plain, right, at 12,000 feet. Is it still that kind of terrain, or is it because
I'm sorry. So when from the gas station, when we left the gas station, we start climbing, and we go all the way up to this top of this pass, and we were at 14,500 where we were hunting goats. And we're living in this valley, and you go up the peaks to 14,500 feet, and so you're constantly going up and down, up and down. Now they drive those Jeeps everywhere they can, and so you're not walking a ton, but it's the elevation and it's steep. It looks like if you've ever seen the mountains outside of Scottsdale, Arizona, they're just rock, giant rock with not much grass on it, no trees. It's just rock, and those ibex will lay down on those rocks and completely disappear. Like you won't be able to see them at all, especially in the middle of the day with the heat waves. So the day that I shoot mine, we find them first thing in the morning. We find them, and they're like probably 6 or 7 miles off, and we put them to bed. So they lay down in the middle of the day. So we start walking, and why I did this, I don't know. This is the other thing that people have to remember. When they go, well, let's just go down over this, and we'll see if we can sneak up over the backside, and we'll see if we can get a shot of them in their bed. Always think this is going to be an all-day event. Take water, take a coat, take your backpack. I don't care if it is 95 degrees. Empty everything but water and a coat. I didn't do that.
This advice has come up multiple times on this podcast where guys like, I don't know why I did this, but bring water even when you don't think you need it.
Bring water and a little bit of shelter. So we start walking, and of course we get to where we thought we could just look over this ridge and they'd be down there. They're not there. So the guide, he's walking around in a pair of like dress shoes, no laces in them, has this little knapsack thing that he always has over his shoulder, and smoking cigarettes. And I'm talking lighting one cigarette with lighting the next cigarette with the current cigarette, just constant chain smoking, no filters, nothing. And he's walking, through this rocky boulder field in dress shoes, for God's sake, leather soled dress shoes. So we're walking, and he says, I think if we go all the way around the end of this mountain and back up over the top, and then we come at them, if we shoot and miss, your dad, who's down at the Jeep, will possibly have an opportunity at the band as they go by. Okay, that sounds great. We're on day 5, and this is the best opportunity we've had, so I'll take it. So we walk all the way to the top, and we get to the top, and we can see where they laid down. We saw a smaller one laying above them. And so we sit there all day, the top of this. And of course, I had drank the bottle of water I had, most of it by now, thinking I'm going to save the last quarter of this in case this turns into a 3-day event. And so we're just sitting there waiting for the sun to the shadows to start getting long. And they get up and they start moving off in the middle of the day. Well, what they were doing, I didn't know this at the time, and I don't think they did either, but looking back at the footage, what they were doing is they were chasing the shade too. So in the middle of the day, they'd get up and move to the other, to another shade spot, lay back down. So we put a play on them as they're moving, and they're worried that they're moving off. And so we go over these 3 ridges, down the side, up on the other one, and get within 170 yards. I quickly show the interpreter how to record the kill scene, and I shoot this Billy, and it just, he shoot him. He stands up, I shoot him, and he jumps 3 lunges and is dead. Just unbelievable footage. In fact, you can watch it on our Eastman's Hunting Journals YouTube channel. It's on there. That hunt is.
Yeah, I'll have to find that. I'll put a link to that in the show notes, so if anybody wants to see that video, it'll be right there.
So, then of course, we're high-fiving and stuff. And my dad, who's not sick by now, he's starting to recover. My brother was sick at that point, but he's starting to recover. And so he and the driver get in the car and they drive to the bottom below us. And he walks up there and takes photos of it. It was really, just really, really fun. One of those trips that I'm glad I did it. I'm not sure I'd do it again, but I'm glad I did it once. It was unbelievable because just the logistics to get there and get back. My brother did end up taking one the last day of the hunt. And it was just crazy because on the way back, it was another thing where we get off the hunt at 10 and the interpreter comes in and says, hey, plans have changed. We have to go to this other town called Hovd, and you guys are gonna fly out of Hovd. But in order to do that, we have to leave at midnight. It was like in a couple hours? He goes, yeah, we have to leave at midnight. So pack all your stuff up and we're gonna leave, and then you fly out sometime tomorrow. I'm like, sometime tomorrow? Well, we're not sure when the airplane's gonna get there. We'll know more when we get there. Okay. That sounds awesome. So we get back in the Jeeps, throw all our crap in the Jeeps, get back in the Jeeps, and we drive, and we get up on top, and it was a starry night, full moon, saw wild horses up there. And the guy pulls over. I think he was getting tired. So he pulls over and gets out and is having a smoke break. So we all pile out of there. And it's snowing. We're so high in August, it's snowing. It's like 16,000 feet or something like that. It's snowing. And when I say cold, it's this brutal desert cold. It was crazy, absolutely insane. But then we get to Hav, and the on the way there, halfway down the mountain, we get to Hav to like 10 o'clock in the morning. About 7 in the morning, the exhaust on the Jeep falls off, and so we're sucking in the carbon into the cab, and it's cold out, so nobody wants to roll the windows down. We have to roll the windows down so we don't fall asleep. I'm pretty sure the camera guy got asphyxiated because he passed out twice on me. It was just this crazy thing, right? So we get into Hovd, and we get to the airport, and they're like, yeah, we don't know when the airplane's coming. Okay, like today? Well, we're hoping by 5 it'll be here. So you guys just hang out. Okay. And then so it gets close enough, and she's like, okay, we'll take your luggage now. I'm like, what if I don't want to give you my luggage? What if we're here for 3 days? She goes, well, if we do, we'll just give it back to you. Okay. And so we have our head, our horns, and our capes are all salted, and they're in big duffel bags. And she says, oh, you guys are overloaded on luggage, what you can take. It's going to cost you money. I'm like, okay, how much? At this point, I don't care. Yeah. Like, I don't care. How much? And she says, and I can't remember the amount in Mongolian. I think they're rubles, actually. And it was like 300. The interpreter's like, oh, it's like $300. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And I go give her a card. She's like, oh, no, we don't take credit cards. It all has to be cash. Where am I going to find $300 in cash in your cash? Not mine. I have $100 bills, but I need their cash. The interpreter's like, oh, let's go down to the bank. Thinking, oh, this is going to be a mess. This is not going to be good. So I leave my dad and my brother at the airport. I said, if I don't come back, tell my wife and my unborn child I love them. This sounds like I'm going to go get, rolled. All the money in my life is going to be pulled out of a bank in Mongolia, and I'm going to get rolled, and this is going to be it. He's like, no, it'll be safe. So we go down to this bank, or I go down to this bank with the interpreter and the driver. And I walk up to the bank, but the bank's closed. It's like Sunday or something. He goes, oh, you'll have to get it out of the ATM machine. Oh, this is going to be interesting. So I put my card in there. Thankfully, I know the PIN. Thankfully, it doesn't reject it, and it starts spitting out money. And when I say spitting out money, thankfully I had my backpack with me because it was coming out of there, and I was stuffing money in every pocket in my backpack. I had enough money to fill a paper bag. I'm not kidding you. That's how much this money was. Of course, I'm getting like $300 in $1 bills is what it equates to. And so I'm walking around with this backpack full of money thinking, I'm going to get rolled. There is no way that this is going to work. I'm going to get rolled. We get back in the Jeep and we're driving. And when we went to the bank, it seemed like all the people we're all walking to the same spot. And we go past this place and I look, and it's just this huge concrete walls for 100 yards on each side, and the entire city is showering together. I mean, there's 4,000 people in this thing, just lathered up, washing and having water fights the whole 9 yards. I asked a D. I said, what are they? I mean, is this normal? He goes, oh yeah, they only turn the water on every fourth day, so everybody shows up and they shower all at once. That's the only time the water's turned on.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I wasn't going to get rolled. I was going to get showered.
You're gonna get lathered.
So, yeah, exactly. So we went back to the airport. The plane showed up, and we flew out, and we flew back into Ulaanbaatar. And I've never been so happy to see a crappy hotel than I was to see the Genghis Khan Hotel in Ulaanbaatar. It's a completely different place now. They have skyscrapers, and it's it's a huge city and lots of infrastructure now. But I got to see it before it was much. They didn't have paved roads. The only pavement was in front of the hotel, and it was at the gate to the up through the underpass thing, and then back to the gate. It was the only pavement in the whole place, the whole city. Crazy.
That's insane. You mentioned that you're glad you did it, but you don't think you ever do it again. I'm not sure if you talked me into it or out of it, Ike. I really don't know.
It was definitely an adventure, an unbelievable
that's what
adventure.
I was going to say. It's I think a lot of these things, right, in the moment. This is why we love hunting stories, right? Hunting stories, they kind of suck as you're going through it. Almost all of them do, right? But at the end, they're just the most fun things to relive. And man, my face is hurting from all of just like the things that kept adding up for you. I couldn't stop smiling, man. That's a good story.
It's one of those things that I say this about hunting almost always. People, you're in the trenches. You're like, what are we doing? This is dumb. This is the dumbest thing. I've really got us. We have a saying in our family, a fine mess you got us into here, Ike. This is a great disaster. And then about, I got home and telling the story, and I wanted to go back. I was like, I gotta go back tomorrow.
Yeah.
What? It's like childbirth. You look at a woman. If I went through birthing a child, there would be one person on the planet ever. I would never have another one. And my wife has one, and it wasn't 6 months later. She's like, well, if we have them closed, I'm sorry. Were you in the same room I was in? Because that does not look like fun.
Right? Yeah, my wife almost bled out for one of ours. Like, I had the baby for an hour and a half, and they told me she'd be there in 10 minutes. Hour and a half goes by. I'm holding the baby. I'm like, what's going on? She gets in there. Everything ends up being totally fine. And 3 months later, she's like, let's have another one. I'm like, what the hell's going on? That was the scariest thing I've ever lived through, and it wasn't even me.
Yeah, exactly. It's absolute horror was what happens in a birthing room. It's just unbelievable. And there's people that have done that. We have friends that they have done that 12 times. I'm like, no, I'm not doing this 12 times. Not.
No way. But I don't know. I don't know how many women are listening, or if I have an all-male audience. I don't know if we can compare childbirth to hunting stories, but
no. The point was, you're absolutely right. No, 100% you cannot. It doesn't take 9 months to do, and it is the longest 36 hours of your life. But the point was, we do a very similar thing. We go on these adventures that we embrace the suck and then think to yourselves, why would we do this? Why do we do this? We call this fun? Are we having fun? This doesn't seem like it's fun to me. And then hours later, days later, you're like, man, I can't wait to get back and do it again.
Spend the next 10, 11 months waiting to another shot for the suck to embrace, right? So.
Yep, absolutely. Fun, man. Dream about it, which is even worse.
Right? God, like I told you, I'm a new hunter, and I've never really devoted myself year-round to anything. And all of a sudden hunting, I'm like, yep. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. Let's keep going. Yeah. Let's just keep diving into it and keep not being successful and being freezing cold and whatever. Let's just keep going.
Well, and you learn so much about yourself, and you learn so much about the people that you're there with, and you grow, and you have opportunities to grow. You have opportunities to better your gear and better your person and better your group. And it's, there is really nothing like that can put you to that type of test that you can do every year. Even in the military, it's a lot different than hunting. It's a lot different, and hunting's just unique. Absolutely.
A big part of it's the mental. Like, there's no one stopping you from just walking away from it, but you just got to
Yep.
keep pushing. There's not
Yep.
many things where there's not somebody pushing you along, but hunting, it's all in your head. So,
Yep.
but
100%.
yeah, we're getting a little off track here. We're not here to talk about all that stuff. We just want to hear hunting stories,
We
Ike.
just want to hear Sutton's hunt stories. Okay.
Yeah. So I know you said you got another couple for us. I'll
Yep.
let
I'm
you
going to
kind
tell
of set
you,
the stage.
yeah, I'm going to tell you. So here at Eastman's, we've been doing something for 30 years where out of our entire database of subscribers and audience, we pull a hunt winner. We've been doing one for 30 years, two for 20 years, and then so we did a hunting journal, or out of our hunting journal subscribers, we've been doing that for 30 years, and that was a deer hunt, and it's an epic adventure of its own. And then the bow hunting journal subscribers, we pull an elk hunt, and then now that we have Tag Hub, which is our online research tool, we pull 5 or 4 hunts out of that audience, and it's 2 antelope hunts, an elk, and a deer. So kind of a wide range. I tell you that to set this. So every year I get to go hunt hunts with people that have varying skills. Everything from I've never seen an elk to I've killed a 360 bull. Are we going to have the opportunity to shoot at a 360 bull? That type of, everything in between. And which is always fun for me, because you get these guys are always really humble. Out of I don't know, probably close to 60 hunts. I've never had a guy that was a complete jerk. Never once. We've had a couple guys that are annoying, but never a jerk.
Yeah. It's a fine line. It's a fine line between those two things.
Yeah, exactly. And so I've had the opportunity to hunt with varying skill sets and hunt a place that I know really well. Because the other thing that we have to do in order to do this, we have to stack the deck, kind of. Because you never know, am I going to draw out of that, 100,000 people, am I going to draw a guy that is 72 years old and can't walk, gets winded walking to the refrigerator? Or am I going to draw the Billy Badass 30-year-old that's been hunting in the backcountry the last 10 years and, couldn't, physically do it. Maybe some skill sets need sharpened, but can physically do it. So you never know. So I stack the deck. They're always outfitted hunts for various reasons. Number 1, tags. Number 2, liability and legality. And number 3, it's always easier to share the load, right?
Yeah.
Share the workload with an outfitter or guide. So I have a guy. So we draw this random dude out of the draw, and I get a hold of him. And that's one of the funnest things I get to do. In fact, I get to do it in a couple of weeks. Is I get to call these guys, just randomly call them. It's like winning the radio contest,
Yeah.
Randomly call them, and we Facebook and Instagram live it, so that because you never know what they're going to say. So most of the time,
is this something you guys advertise, or is this like completely unknown to these guys that because they are a member that they're entered in this competition?
Oh, I would say we try real hard to advertise the crap out of it, but most of the time, it's just like winning the lottery. A lot of times the guys don't realize that they're entered into it and think there's no way in hell I'll ever win this. There's no way I'll win this.
Yeah.
So most of the time they're dumbfounded when I call them. Actually, rarely do they answer the phone. Usually I have to leave a message and then they call me back, because no one answers their phone anymore. It's like, if you need something, text me. Yep. So we randomly call this guy, and he answers the phone, and he sounds like he's just lost his dog. I was like, dude, I'm giving you a hunt. And he says, is there any way I can call you back? Yeah, sure. Call me back. And he answered his phone, which is weird. Calls me back 30 minutes later. He goes, man, I appreciate that. My wife was in labor, so I was in the labor room. You answered your phone? He goes, well, she's pretty excited I want to hunt. I'm like, do I need to let you go? You can call me tomorrow. It's not a big deal. Next week's fine too. He's like, no. They decided that she's going to do a C-section, so they're prepping her. And so I got a couple minutes here. Okay.
They named the baby after you?
No, guess what? Guess what they did name him? His name was Reed Elam, mule deer backwards.
No way.
Yep, because the guy won a mule deer hunt.
That's awesome. I
Isn't that
wonder if he had to
crazy?
talk his wife into that or not.
I don't know. Well, I met her actually at a show. I don't think so. I think she was pretty excited about it.
That's a great name. I never,
Yeah.
what, you could have told me that 100 times. I probably wouldn't have thought about putting it backwards and seeing mule deer there. So
Yep. Yep.
that's a
Reed
great
Elam.
story, though. I can't believe he answered while she was like in labor.
Yeah, she was. They were. She was. They were trying to decide. I think what happened. After hunting with him, I think what happened is they were trying to decide if she was going to continue in the labor room or if they were just going to go straight to a C-section. And I think he answered the phone thinking it was a medical professional or something. I don't know if it was just an
Waiting to
instinct or
hear from
what.
his wife's
Yeah.
doctor or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Like, huh,
We'll
307.
give him
I don't
benefit of the
recognize
doubt.
that. Yeah, exactly. So it was a fun hunt, and he killed a really nice deer in Montana with Sizzle and S Outfitters up there, and it was a lot of fun. But it was that was definitely one of the ones for the book. I hope I don't ever get that again. I've had some funny stories. I did have one guy turn it down actually. He was 78 years old and just had triple bypass surgery, and this is what he said. This makes you go, oh my gosh, I'm glad there's people like this still in the world. He said, listen, I would love to go and I'll probably be healthy enough to do that. But I've lived my life. Why don't you redraw a name or go to the alternate guy? And hopefully it's a young man that will remember this hunt for many, many years and get to share it with his family for many, many years versus me that I don't have very many years left. I went, holy cow, is
Wow.
that insightful? So it was pretty cool. The kid that took the hunt, his name was Danny, and he wrote this guy a big long letter
I
and
was gonna
and
say,
gave
did
him
they
a
get
bunch of
introduced
stuff.
or
And
anything?
yeah, I don't
That's
think. I mean,
awesome.
I think they wrote back and forth, but it wasn't. I don't think they ever met in person because one of Danny lived in. I think Danny lived in Nebraska, and the guy that originally won it lived in California, if I remember right.
Okay.
But
That's cool
yeah,
though. It's cool that people are still doing stuff like that. You wouldn't think with today's times that like anybody would be that, like, I don't know if noble is the right word, but it feels very noble of him to just go,
humble. Yeah,
no, humble, noble, all that stuff. Just be like, you know what?
yeah,
There's people that will enjoy this and it'll mean a lot more
yep.
to them. That's cool.
Yep, yeah. So, I could go on to hundreds of hunting stories with those guys, the guys that have really good shots, and guys that come out here and don't, they've never shot more than 200 yards, and it's always fun. It's
Yeah,
always fun. But
that's cool.
um, yeah. So, well, I appreciate. I mean, I could go on for days and days and tell you sheep hunting stories in Northwest Territories or caribou stories in Quebec back when we could do that, or a mountain goat hunt in British Columbia. But I know time is of the essence for everyone, so it's up to you.
No, you know what? If you're willing to tell me a couple more, like I said, I got all day, so I'm not gonna ever cut anybody off. I'll hear hunting stories all day long. So if you want to tell one or two more, please feel
Yeah,
free. But if you got to run, I totally understand that as well.
perfect. So I'll tell you, we did a cool thing in 2017. So I was telling you, my grandfather, hunted up north for decades, and he got to do some really cool stuff. There was a film that he produced called "Challenging the Northwest Territories," and what it was is the Canadian government came to him. He was filming in Alaska, and the Canadian government came to him and said, "Listen, we'd like you to go to Northwest Territories and put together a documentary and see if it's worth hunting. If we can actually sell hunts to Americans, Canadians, Europeans, and it's worth it. So we don't want you to just go in there. We want you to film it." So him and two of his buddies, they spent 90 days in the Northwest Territories before anybody, before white men were really in there.
Yeah,
And they just hunted. They could shoot anything they wanted. They lived off the land, and they spent, this unbelievable summer
that's
in the Northwest
amazing. So there
Territories.
was no like tags, there was no
No,
season dates. It was just go
no.
up there, hunt what you
Yep.
can, tell us how it
Yep.
goes. That
Yep.
is
Tell us if it's worth it. And
that's an
now,
opportunity you
they
will never hear about again. Yeah.
no, no, he went up there and they shot, I think between the three of them, they shot like 7 doll sheep, and a doll sheep now is $35,000 hunt. I mean,
Yeah.
they shot seven of them, and they shot a bunch of caribou and just all kinds of stuff. Had grizzly bear encounters, and anyway, crazy adventure. Check it out. There's a bunch of stuff in there, but the neat thing, how I get played into this, is in 2017, Yeti Coolers approached us and said, "Hey, we've seen your family history because we did this documentary with one of the last remaining survivors of my grandfather's friends. His name was Danny. He's now passed away, but he was an apple farmer in Washington. Danny Apples was his company. He invented the ability to have apples all year round. He figured out how to put them in sheds and so that they would be fresh all year round. He's the reason why you can get a Honeycrisp in December.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah. So, but he was a real colorful guy, and he went with my grandfather on this adventure. So we interviewed him before he passed away. We interviewed him and let him tell the stories and all the fun stuff, and then we worked in some of the old footage from that trip into this deal. Well, the marketing director for Yeti saw that. We call it the Eastman family history. Saw that, and he said, "Hey, I want to do a film on you guys, and I want to go back up to the Northwest Territories and go on a hunt." He tells us this at Sheep Show. I'm like, "You want to do it when?" "Well, this summer." "Okay, I don't think you understand. That is impossible. These guys book out 3-4 years to get a sheep hunt." Well, it just so happened, because of connections and who I know and people that the family knows and they know us, we work a deal out with a gal from Canal Outfitters, and she had just taken over this territory and was hunting it and had a spot for us. So we went up there, and here's this crazy thing. In the challenging Northwest Territories, my grandfather's film, when he's up there, there's this outfitter, and his name's Cougar Long, and he's building a cabin right along the Canal Road, which the Canal Road was the Canal Highway is how lower 48 is connected to Alaska. This is one of the ways. There's two main roads, and this is one of them. Right along the road, he's building this cabin out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, out in the middle of nowhere in the McKenzie Mountains, and his plan is to outfit this as long as Grandpa Gordon tells the government that it's worth it. But he's ain't got nothing else to do, so he's building this cabin. So my grandfather films it, helps him films him building it, helps him build this thing, and then on the film, my grandfather walks a sheep down and shoots the sheep within sight of the cabin. They were watching my grandfather do this with a spot scope. Anyway, so this is on this film. So unbeknownst to my brother and I, we go all the way up there, and it's a true northern adventure where you spend 3 days in Yellowknife because of weather, and you spend 2 more days in a little village that has an airport, waiting for more weather. Anyway, we get in there, we land at the Canal Lake, and I tell Guy as we land, I go, "I'm pretty sure this is Canal Lake. I'm pretty sure this is where that was all filmed." And Guy's like, "Man, that lake looks like the same lake." Because in the film, there's a chunk where they land a beaver, or they land not a beaver, a super cub on floats. And when they land, there's a bull moose standing in the lake, and the bull moose's head's underwater, and they land, and the bull moose picks his head up, and there's an airplane sitting there. But he just like freaks out, right? It's pretty cool footage. Well, so I know what the lake looks like. I'm like, "Man, this thing looks a lot alike." Well, we land the plane, get all our gear over, get in the cabin, and walk up, and sure as shit, that cabin that guy is building is still in this outfitter's camp, and they use it as the cook shed. I mean, it's the cook shack. It's the kitchen, and it has a plaque on it that says Cougar Lawn 1967, and it's 50 years to within a couple of weeks. 50 years later, my brother and I are in that exact same camp hunting dull sheep, and my brother ends up shooting his sheep on the same exact mountain that my grandfather walked his down.
That's amazing. That is so amazing. A question about your grandfather's movie. Can I find that on the Eastman's YouTube, or where can I find it?
Yeah, you can find our version of this hunt, not Yeti's. Yeti's is out there too, but we filmed it as well on our YouTube, Eastman's Hunting Journals YouTube channel. You can find our version of this hunt, which has all the old footage, and we actually built it like Grandpa narrated it, which was kind of neat. And then there's the Eastman family history, which has Danny Gibbers in there, and then you can watch chunks of Northwest Territories. We don't have the whole thing, because the film over time degraded. So we have pieces
Gotcha.
of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that does. And that's all on the YouTube.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll try and
100%.
find some of that stuff and again put it in the show links. But I'm super interested in seeing all that.
Yeah.
That's a super cool that your brother managed to pull that off. And you said 50 years to like the day or to the week.
Yeah. 50 years within a month for sure. Cause they
That's
only
insane.
hunt up there in, August, and we were there the 1st of August. So
Yeah.
it was so serendipitous. And oddly enough, it wasn't planned by anybody. It's not like we said, well, we got to get to Canal Lake, or we got to get to, it was just, hey, let's go to the Northwest Territories. We'll make it work. In fact, we were hoping to go to another place called the Plains of Abraham, which Grandpa spent a ton of time on. It's this huge plateau on the top of the McKenzie Mountains, and it's as flat as a table. And they call it the Plains of Abraham. And we were hoping to get there, but we never had to go there because of success at Canal Lake. And walking up there, and the shack is there, the log cabin is still built, and using it, and it's amazing, unbelievable. So
That's cool.
that's not much of a hunting story. It's kind of a history story, but it was neat to be involved.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it gave me a little bit of chills that you guys just like randomly happened. So I like those kind of stories too. Like I say all the time, there's no such thing as a bad hunting story. There's some
That's right.
bad results, but the stories themselves, if they're worth telling, they're worth telling. So,
That's
cool,
right.
Ike. Do you wanna share any others, or are you all set? I think we're pretty good for now. If you want to kind of tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah. So you can find me. I have Instagram, Facebook. It's Ike_Eastman on Instagram. Eastman's Hunting Journals is our handle on YouTube, the company handle on Facebook and Instagram. I have my own podcast as well called Eastman's Hunting Podcast Edition, where I interview guys like you, and we talk about your life and what normal dudes can learn from you, because you've had trials and tribulations and things that are important in your life. In the red thread that connects us all is hunting, but we really talk about life and about success and stuff like that. So that's our podcast. Taghub.eastmans.com is where you can go if you're looking for data on how to draw out west or how to hunt out west. We have some mule deer courses on there. That's A to Z on how to hunt mule deer. So all kinds of cool stuff there.
That's awesome, man. Well, thank you, Ike. I really appreciate it. I'm going to put links to all that stuff you just mentioned again in the show notes. We're going to have a lot down there this episode, but I think it's going to be worth checking out. Yeah. Thank you, man. I appreciate you taking the time. It was great to meet you. And don't be afraid to ever reach out if you ever need anything. I'm here to help you.
I will. Thank you, Michael. You enjoy Colorado. You're not down there in Texas, the Texas heat.
Ooh, man, with the day we left, 108, it felt like 128. So I was like, let's get out of here.
No kidding. We don't need to be here. Let's go to Colorado.
Yes, sir. All right, guys. That's it. Another couple stories in the books. I want to thank Ike again for coming on the podcast. It was a pleasure meeting him, and he had some amazing stories. Like I said, really not sure if I was sold or convinced otherwise of Mongolia. So thanks again, sir. I do appreciate you. Make sure you guys check out what Eastman has going on. I've attached some of the links to the things that Ike spoke about in the show notes. So some of the YouTube videos, just the Eastman Hunting Journals podcast, the website, all that stuff. You can find it in the show notes. Beyond that, guys, thank you for tuning in. And like I mentioned at the beginning, please get out there and share the podcast with a friend. And please review us on whatever you're listening to right now, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever it might be. We appreciate that. That's it, guys. This was a fun one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Now get out there and make some stories of your own.